Today, we are going behind bars to hear directly from former Judge James Gosnell Jr. We first told you about his arrest by federal authorities back in September of last year, and then days later, new details came out about what he was actually charged with. Now, after months of FOIA requests, we are getting the jailhouse calls that he made while he was at the Alcannon Detention Center. We've got investigative reporter Emily Johnson joining me now. Hello, Emily.
Hi, Nick.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, let's talk about these jailhouse calls. But before we do, let's get a refresher on who Judge Gosnell is and what he was arrested for all those months ago.
Gosnell was a magistrate judge in Charleston County, pretty well known locally amongst lawyers, anyone kind of in the field that is going to court regularly. And he was charged back in September with basically multiple different counts of possessing child pornography. Those charges we're still trying to learn a little bit more about, which will hopefully eventually come out when he is back in front of a federal court judge. But until then, we know that these charges basically just surround possessing child pornography and sexual abuse materials.
Right, and I think that there was, at least in the arrest warrants that we saw, he had been talking with folks across the country about things that he planned to do with children and with other people with children. And again, all of those just allegations at this point. But we've now heard from him and what some of that time was like while he was behind bars in Charleston. Tell us a little bit about some of the people that he's talking to and what kinds of things that he's talking about. Because I think a lot of people never hear a jailhouse call.
No, a jailhouse call is a very interesting look inside of someone's mental state when they're behind bars. It obviously is very jarring for most people. They've never been in that situation before. So it's him talking to who we presume are loved ones, family members, maybe friends. It's hard because they don't always identify who they are on the phone. So a lot of the times in these calls, you hear him talking to a woman who, he's talking about his nephews at some point, so we can kind of pull that family tie in. But he is talking a lot, definitely avoiding talking about his case as much as possible, but he is talking about his home, his pet. He's talking a lot about kind of what's going on in his life that he's kind of had to leave behind while he's locked up behind bars.
If you've got room for that couch and you can move it, then do so. But if you don't,
I haven't had an
What's that? You got the U-Haul, okay.
Yeah, I got a big U-Haul, so I can fit it.
Okay. Well,
I think they're trying to find a rug. Is there a rug or something that you're looking for? A rug?
Yeah, there was a rug in my chambers. It was the Oriental rug in my chambers. In the room there.
Yeah, they're trying to locate it or something.
Okay, you're there now?
I am. Yes, sir.
Okay. Anything else you need to know from me?
No, that's it. I was going to get a storage unit to start putting some stuff in there, like stuff you want to kind of put to the side. But that's no.
Lionel said no, only to put it in the garage to save you. But this is what I'm going to tell you to do: is most of those papers you're only going to have to go through for me. So if you put them in a storage deal, it's not going to work. And then what we'll do is we'll move everything from the garage to the storage unit that we want to keep, and everything else we'll just sell.
Yes, sir. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like 7 or 8 paintings, notes, and then a bunch of pictures. We got Ottoman here. We got a picture here. We got one of those big mallet things, whatever you call it, gavel.
Yeah, the big one. Yeah.
Yeah, the big one's got it right here, and a wooden one.
And there's a little bitty one that Joe gave me years ago. And you're getting the stuff that we talked about.
I can't find that piece of sweatshirt.
It is a orange sweatshirt, and it was up on the top shelf up there.
In the front bedroom?
In the front bedroom. Nobody's doing anything with the big prints, the Confederate prints that are over there. I haven't given anybody the reason at this time to take anything like that. Okay?
Oh, I'm tracking.
Okay, well.
But do you want them?
What?
Do you want them to stay here in the house?
It doesn't matter right now.
he and his lawyers are making plans to eventually sell the house. He has no intention really of, well, he didn't really have a plan for what should happen if he were to make bond and to get out. But then he also, at the same time, said, if I do get bond, I'm going to go back to my house, right?
Yeah, it's a little bit of contradictory. And I think an important thing to also realize is these calls are over a basically 10-day time period from right after when Gosnell was arrested to after the first few federal court hearings that he had.
We feel good about our case because we know what I didn't do. We know what I did do. And and because this is recorded, I'm not going to.
I got you. I understand. I got you.
But we're very comfortable where we stand right now, and knowing what we did and putting the timelines all back together and stuff like that. So and knowing who the cast of characters here were, and listening to what their reasoning for doing this was. So anyway, I'm positive on that point. I'm very depressed about having to be where I'm at. Everything's going to be okay.
Yes, sir. That's all I need to hear, man. I don't know what's going on, but I'm not jumping to any conclusions either.
It was bullshit. Is what it was. It was a hack, and
yes, sir.
And we're having to show them that, but we're going to be okay. It's nerve-wracking to me right now because I had to resign.
And throughout those hearings, more information did slowly start to come out. So I think his demeanor pretty much stays the same throughout the calls, but I think you can tell a little bit of a change in how he was handling his assets and potentially thinking about his future after more information came out. The longer more information was coming out behind the scenes as well with these federal investigators.
And you can tell throughout the calls that initially in the early calls, I think there was a lot of support from the people that he was talking to, and by extension, the people that they were talking to, for kind of a, let's wait and see what happens. Exactly. Then we know outside of jail, several days before his bond hearing, that new information came out after federal authorities searched his office. And they brought basically a whole bunch of new reasons why his bond should be revoked. And there was a shift in some of these jailhouse calls where it sounds like people are asking more questions.
I have 3 nephews.
Well, 2 of them I know are upset.
Okay, well, I'll call Joseph Hewer right now.
Okay. I love you,
Skipper. I love you too. Just keep everybody calm for me.
I'm trying very much to.
Y'all are not to talk to anybody really about anything at this time. Be careful who you share anything with.
Yeah.
I mean, girlfriends, boyfriends, husbands, dogs, cats, birds. Be careful what you share because all that does is just get drummed out of proportion. There is a possibility, they're telling me this is a good possibility, that I can be out of all of this, but it's going to take a couple of weeks to get me out of it. I can't talk to you over the phone about it.
I understand. I don't know what you've gotten into, but I hope to God that something can happen for the good.
Well, don't believe everything you read.
Yeah, I know, and that's what I'm telling your nephews.
There's a lot more out there that's got to come out.
And there are definitely more day-to-day things that Gosnell is talking about on the phone. For example, he's even talking about how to distribute the frozen meats in his freezer, telling his loved ones how to prepare the brisket and the pot roast that he had and kind of walking them through. So he was, although he was maintaining his innocence, he also was planning to potentially be gone for a long time because I think most people know frozen meats can be all right in a freezer for months, if not years. So I would think if you're trying to get rid of those items, you also might be planning for the future in a way.
Go ahead and clean out the freezers of all the frozen foods and all up there. There's some hams up there you can have, some fresh hams.
Okay.
There is some pot roast that all you have to do is put in the crock pot and cut on. They're absolutely delicious. I think there's a brisket. I think there's a brisket in there as well.
Okay.
Some shrimp.
And there was also some other things. I mean, there's a little bit of levity in selling your couch or preparing your frozen meats, whatever. But one of the things that really struck me throughout these calls is just how like humanizing it was to listen to him talk about organizing family members to come over and take care of his dog. He's got a dog. His name's Austin. At one point, somebody on the other end actually puts the phone down, and you can hear him having a conversation with this dog.
Yeah.
And, in some regards, it's a little bit sad for that dog because you know that, we know now, looking 6 months back, that Gosnell never came back to his house. And we find out in one of the later calls that he had actually asked somebody to put his dog down.
How's little man?
He's doing good. I came in the door, grabbed the leash, and we went for a little walk, and he pooped and peed. And Greg fed him dinner and is taking care of him while I was at work.
Okay, well, my biggest concern was the puppy.
Yeah, he's doing good.
Okay, he's getting used to things, I guess. That's good.
We got Sonic for dinner tonight, so he had some of my tater tots.
Hey, Austin.
Hold on, and put the phone by his ear.
Okay.
Austin, it's Daddy. Go ahead.
Austin, I love you. Austin, puppy, it's Daddy. It's Skipper. Daddy loves you. Daddy loves you, Austin.
He's licking the phone.
All right, well. Hey, I'm going to ask you to do something for me that is the most difficult thing in my life that I've ever asked anybody to do. But I need for you to get Austin and take him to the vet for me and put him down.
All right. Okay. You should...
Give him a big kiss for me. My situation is this. Is that I'm going to be a couple, 2 weeks anyway into this. Might be a month before the hearing that we want can come forward.
Okay.
Garrett doesn't want to walk Austin anymore because of all the stuff in the press.
Right.
I don't blame him.
I know.
I appreciate what he's done. Hold him tight and tell him I love him.
Yes, sir.
But I don't have anybody to take care of him.
So all of that was, sort of encapsulated this idea
human.
of like, people are humans, and even everybody's got
Even accused sex offenders.
Yeah.
Yep. And I think one interesting part was, at least I've been in those federal court hearings for Gosnell, and there's no cameras in there. So it's hard for us to show viewers and the public what's being said. But Gosnell really didn't speak in any of these hearings. It was really his attorney speaking on his behalf, although Gosnell was sitting there. And so unless you've been in a courtroom throughout the last however many decades that Gosnell was presiding over, you might have never even heard him speak.
Yep.
And that was my personal experience. So also just hearing his tone and hearing who this man was that we've kind of talked about a lot for the last few months and have been a big, speaking conversational point in the Low Country, actually hearing his voice and hearing that tone and kind of, like you said, putting the human behind this kind of crazy case that we've been talking about was definitely interesting and I think beneficial to hear.
Yeah, when he was talking to his relatives, you could still kind of hear that judge tone. He was, talking about, listen as I give you the instructions for all of the things that need to happen here. And so, some of that was still in there. He also mentioned that, he was doing well, but he was also, it was tough. He talked about being in basically a medical wing or a medical cell where he was being separated from all the other prisoners, all the other inmates. And he described his cell as 4 white walls, a bathroom, and a bed. And he spent his entire time sort of just doing nothing and thinking and resting.
Yep, and he compared it to solitary confinement, which I thought was interesting. And he did mention his safety multiple times because keep in mind, although the type of judge he wasn't necessarily always putting these individuals behind bar. There are people in that jail that probably were before him in a courtroom at some point. So there was a big argument in these federal hearings to keep him safe. So it was interesting him saying in these calls, I'm in the medical unit, I'm away from the rest of the inmates. But because you are away from the rest of the inmates, that also is more isolating than it would be if you're in general population.
Yeah. What did we learn, though, from his calls? Because we have not actually heard him say anything about whether or not he's innocent or guilty or did any of the things that he's accused of. But we did get a glimpse of that in these jailhouse calls.
Yep. And it was interesting because multiple times he kept saying, I shouldn't talk about my case. I shouldn't talk about this at all. But yet then would proceed to talking at least a little bit about the case and enough of a glimpse that we could get behind his thoughts on where his innocence or guilt was standing. And he did say at one point, he said he was hacked, that this was blown out of proportion, that they're going to figure all that out, that investigators will uncover that throughout their investigation. But then as the calls proceed, you can also hear him saying, I'm innocent. I didn't do this. Wait until more information comes out. The media, the media, are blowing out of proportion. But he basically remained and continued his innocence throughout most of these phone calls. He never admitted guilt in any way.
Throughout all of this, he's telling his loved ones that he is likely going to be moved to another facility. We know he ended up being moved to Williamsburg. That's where he is now, at least to our knowledge. But we haven't been able to get any more insight into the things he's doing, saying, or how he is in Williamsburg, correct?
Nope, we haven't been able to at all. We couldn't even get a mugshot from when he was reprocessed in a Williamsburg County jail. And
that's unusual.
That's very unusual. I don't know, have you ever seen a case like that? Because I haven't. You're supposed to get a mugshot every time you're reprocessed, and he probably did, but they're weirdly not sharing it with us. And we could never even figure out the exact date that he was transferred either, because the Williamsburg Sheriff's Office really wasn't giving us a whole lot of information. And keep in mind, they are a lot smaller of a county, a lot smaller of a jail. They handle not even half, just a percentage of the inmates that Charleston County does. But we put in a request to Williamsburg right around the time that we did into Charleston for these jailhouse calls, and that is public information, regardless of what you're accused of, where you are. That is blanketly known as being public information and something that we can request. And since then, Williamsburg has not given us absolutely anything. And it actually also did take Charleston County a lot longer than usual to give us these calls, which was just a little bit unique. But so much so that we are not able to get these calls in Williamsburg, that now our attorneys, our station's attorneys, are just sent basically a letter back saying, hey, you have to give us these calls, because the Williamsburg Sheriff's Office was trying to say this might hinder the federal investigation if we give you these calls. And our attorneys said back, that's not how it works. That's a federal investigation. Also, this is a state jail, but not even that. You know, especially if you're a judge, you know more than anybody that everything you say on the phone is recorded and can be used in whether that's your case, whether that's when the media is reporting on it, and yet they're still refusing to give it to us. And we want to get that, because if this much information came out just hearing 10 days of his calls in the Charleston County jail, I would like to imagine that there'd be even more that he's saying now over the last 4 months in Williamsburg.
Right. And we should be very clear that these calls, it is very obvious that they are public information, because when you accept a call from an inmate, there's a recording that says this call is being recorded and monitored, and it specifically says it is not private. If it is a private conversation, then there's a different way that callers and inmates can communicate, in which those calls are not screened, publicly. So this is public information, but jail staff still have to go through all of these calls before they can be released to get rid of any information that isn't public, because the people on the other end of the line, they're private individuals. So if they give out a phone number or something, that's private, and they'll bleep that. And so the point being is, like, it can take some time to get these calls back, and maybe Williamsburg just doesn't have as much of a capacity to do that as Charleston does. But at the end of the day, it's still a public record, and we still should be able at some point to get that call.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we are more than happy to give agencies grace when it's a smaller county, smaller municipality, because we know a lot of times we're putting these record requests back to back to back, kind of overwhelming these smaller departments where maybe one person is part-time working in the public records department. But there's a difference between asking for more time and blanketly denying a request. And that's where our problem is.
Interesting. Okay, well, do we know yet what's next for Gosnell? Do we know when we could possibly see him in court again?
We don't right now, and federal court does work a little bit differently, and it should be moving faster than state court. But, for example, the North Charleston council members that were charged last February have still not gone, had their trials or their sentencing in federal court. So it could really be, within the next year or two. So we've been keeping an eye, and we will continue to keep an eye on any movement on his case. But for now, we're kind of just waiting like the rest of everyone else.
All right. Investigative reporter Emily Johnson, thank you.
Thanks, Nick.
Okay, and if you want to get caught up on everything to do with the Gosnell case, we first started reporting on this back when he was arrested back in September. If you want to get all of those details, you can listen to episode 2 of Deep Dive, where we dove real deep into the allegations against Gosnell. You can find that, of course, anywhere you get your podcasts or on the Live 5 streaming service, which you can find on applications like Roku, Fire TV, and Apple TV. I'm Nick Reagan, and this is Live 5 Deep Dive. Tune in next week for a new episode.